the practice of law is the paradigm information work. Just talking about things and facts, and you go and you push a paper somewhere and something happens, or we can guide people toward principles and systems and ways of thinking about adoption based on strategy, first and foremost. Is this delivering value to the client? In some ways, that's the only metric that matters.
Welcome to Between the Briefs, a podcast by Steno. We're here to bring you practical tips, expert insights, and real conversations about the pretrial process, court reporting, and the legal technology shaping the future of litigation. I'm your host, Adrian.
And I'm your host, Joe Stevens. Whether you're an attorney, paralegal, or just curious about how technology is changing the legal industry, we've got something for you. Each episode will break down complex topics, share behind-the-scenes intel, and talk to the people leading innovation in and out of the courtroom. So grab a coffee and let's get into what's happening between the briefs.
Hello and welcome to Between the Briefs, brought to you by Steno. We are your hosts. My name is Adrian.
And I'm your co-host, Joe Stevens.
In this episode, we are thrilled to welcome Todd Itami, Director of Artificial Intelligence and eDiscovery Solutions at Covington and Burling. Todd is a leader in the application of AI and machine learning to legal practice, particularly in eDiscovery and information governance. His expertise spans complex litigation, large-scale legal tech projects, and developing bespoke software solutions.
With a career dedicated to blending law and technology, Todd has helped reshape the way eDiscovery and AI are used in legal work. He's played a critical role in advising global clients on the integration of AI tools and software, making him a key figure in legal technology.
Todd, welcome to the show. It's great to have you with us here today. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Great to be here. Great to talk to y'all.
Of course, man. So I want to take our audience right to the beginning. Tell me, what got you really involved with law, and what really sparked the passion to lead you to where you are today?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I ask myself, sometimes I think it was like an unfortunately high score on the LSAT led me down this road. You know, I was always kind of a computer nerd, grew up in rural Idaho, like, you know, no stoplight in town, rural Idaho. And I had two things to do, you know, rock and roll music and computers. And my folks bought us this, actually keep one of these on my desk, 486DX computer back in, I think it was 1990. And I would just, you know, broke it, took it apart, fixed it, and I would just have been a computer nerd ever since. So just a total tech geek. And then in college, started a business first out of my dorm room, and then kind of grew from there to have an office space doing like B2B, you know, small and medium-sized business, like full stack development, whether it was web technology or, you know, custom software, those sorts of things. And I don't know, I got in a position in 2010 to sell both businesses, and thought like, I've always wanted to be a lawyer. I'm going to go do that now. And, you know, wordsmith and stand up in court and leave the world of technology behind. But yeah, that didn't last long, you know, staying away from it. And so, found myself back at actually this firm right here, you know, big, giant Washington, D.C. law firm, and with discovery databases and people saying, oh, we're having a problem. Like, all right, what's the architecture? You know, and just kind of got sucked in there to it all. And I've, you know, over the course of the years, been, you know, doing kind of smaller coding or workflow design to automate various tasks for lawyers and for our clients, and, you know, saving all sorts of money. But it's I'm happy recently, like all of a sudden software's cool, you know, like we're kind of like the kid in the corner over in the high school, like, wait, are you guys talking to me? Like, you like it, you know, now with all this energy around the AI, and it's kind of a different world, and in some ways, you know, surreal that all of a sudden the industry like really cares, you know, and there's so much focus on integration of these technologies. And it's really in an industry that has been, I don't know, 10, 15 years behind, you know, on kind of where they're at with software, where they're at with automation. But now there's the kind of the opposite energy. And so it's great. It feels kind of like, you know, the ignored kicker on the high school football team that everybody's like, hey, soccer boy, like go inside practice, like just kick the winning field goal in the state championship and you're showing up at school next, like it's kind of what it's like for computer nerds now at law firms. And so it's a good moment, I think, for legal tech people, and it will continue to be for at least, the foreseeable future. And so that's where I'm at. I'm not sad about it. That's the state of things.
Todd, we're gonna dive into so many things that you just talked about at at length. I have got to ask though, you have a Metallica record behind you, you've got a guitar behind you. How do you pivot from that world, which seems to be in some ways the polar opposite of what's going on inside a large law firm when they're coming to vetting like technology?
Yeah, no, I love all, rock and roll music, music from the, pretty much the 60s on. I love it, but it is different. I kind of think it's hilarious, like the lawyer or the accountant that like thinks they're heavy metal. But no, I don't know. I love it. I think that, my musicianship to enjoyment level is like way skewed, right? Like I'm a very bad musician. I play the guitar, uh, drums, and I'm like a very okay, but I love that, and it's something about. I think there's something with that really maps on to legal tech in that like I have this, desire to create, and there's a part of me, like as previously a graphic artist and in music, you can constantly create and improvise, and there's a creative aspect of it. But at the same time, music's very technical, and it's all mathematical and harmonies and chords, and it's just you can figure it out with math, and we've seen that with these deep neural networks really doing a good job of reproducing songs and those sorts of things. And so it's an interesting kind of mixture of the creative and the technical coming together to put something that people can really connect with. If people don't know why the hell, sometimes I listen to things and I'll listen to literally anything. I'm not a music snob where it could be as poppy, or if I like it, I like it. I'm gonna go buy it, I'm gonna go to the show, I'm gonna scream. And so it's kind of like that. These things come together to create a product we can look at. I think, legal tech's the same way. Some ways like, wow, esoteric, and we can get to a big talk about my personal opinions on the proper type of embeddings for a RAG model to practice, if it's for a legal workflow. But at the end of the day, I think, lawyers and your average person can look at it and go like, wow, this is really helpful. Like, and can realize, tech's like having a moment here. It's creating something. It's where we've built new products. The software is fundamentally different now than it was 3 or 4 years ago. And there's something great about that. We're still trying to figure out like, okay, is it like Terminator 2 Judgment Day cool or Star Trek Utopia cool? Like which one? We're not sure. Neither am I, but there's some parallels there that both of them combine these, highly kind of creative elements and technical elements to produce something that people can just consume.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something there about how the world of technology and how we're seeing it today embedded with our workflows is much different than it was in the past.
Yeah.
One of those large elephants in the room for everyone is AI.
Yep.
How have you seen it really revolutionize eDiscovery? How are you using it currently to make your flow better when it comes to discovery?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the large language models, and, there's this whole debate whether, core capabilities are actually expanding or whether it's just we're integrating the models better or structuring it better. And, but it strikes me that if today, in May of 2025, it's over. Development stop. Large language models at their core, capabilities will not improve. I still see just a huge, long tail of applications to the practice of law in so many ways that, the current integrations are really blunt instruments of the technology, and it's still insanely helpful. And I think, it's hard for me to think of a legal workflow or a legal task that is not aided by AI. I think, in some ways, the practice of law is the paradigm information work. Is you're talking about things and facts, and you go and you push a paper somewhere and something happens, and you try to convince people the words on the paper. And this is information work at its finest. Like maybe like you could say, oh, accounting, maybe something like that as a professional services that's a little bit, even more in that direction, but it's hard for me to decide what isn't. And so people ask this all the time, like, how do we, how do we use it? And I think, there's a big piece of there's a disconnect between developers and users of software in general. And I think for lawyers and legal tech, there's more of a risk that misalignment is going to take place just because like lawyers are so far away from the technology at bottom. And so it makes it hard sometimes to see like, what do we do with this again? Or like, you've given me this chatbot, like now what? And so I tried to tell people like, okay, let's take the easiest kind of example of just proofreading. If all you're doing is taking the many emails or the many documents that you're writing and feeding into an LLM and saying, hey, can you just issue spot for me grammatical errors or typos? Um, that takes like 5 seconds to control copy, control paste into your properly secured and with properly, you know, walled off for privacy reasons chatbot and get something back. And it will catch errors. And there's no lawyer in this country who cannot benefit from that on some level. And it will not improve the quality of your work product. And just that one kind of very simple use case for lawyers. And I think, you can take it and expand from there and say, like, okay, what are the weaknesses in this brief? Do you have any ideas, computer, about better arguments, or what are we missing? Be critical of it. Okay, now agree with it. Now take on the and a judge. And you can ask it all these things, and it takes 2 seconds to fire it off. You maybe have 3 different chat windows open, and you could tell right away, if it's good stuff or not. You could tell right away. Are these ideas good? Did it actually catch typos? Do I agree with their wordsmithing choices? And I think, whether or how quality, how accurate, how good the outputs are. Well, first, they're better than nothing. They're better than the old way, no matter what. That's conclusive. And if not, it's acting as this creative medium as prompting us with ideas. Because more times than not, I'll ask it, even if it's a fairly technical thing, maybe I'll be coding. I'll say, do you have any optimization ideas here for this piece of code? And it will tell me things. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, wow. Never in a million years could I. I mean, Claude is a far better coder than I am. But sometimes I'll be like, yeah, I don't really think you're not considering X, Y, and Z things in the cloud architecture, and you're not thinking about this, but you did give me an idea. You did kind of make me think about this critically. And so I think a lot of it is creating that relationship or that intuition about how do we use these tools effectively, and how do we use them in a way where we're not like, driving our car, following our car into the ocean on our AI map guidance in a sense, and instead using it responsibly and being able to kind of put it through this filter of like, how do we use these tools? I mean, it's an intuition, it's a skill, it's something that takes experience to do. But once you get there and understand how to use them, like, wow, kind of sky's the limit. But even these basic use cases are easy. It's easy to see how they deliver value, and certainly worth whatever the $25 a month, you're paying for X Frontier Model Enterprise Edition.
Yeah, Todd. I mean, I love the idea of. I mean, there's this whole theory that really good ideas and great innovation comes from like the ability for multiple ideas to sort of collide together, right? And when you have that instant feedback from your AI, that's what you're doing. You're bringing your mindset you're kind of treating it like a thought partner, and
Yeah.
then you never know what you're going to get. Okay, given that, if you can take us inside to the degree to which you can. I mean, you're talking about a law firm. You're talking about an industry that, as you said, is decades behind in some ways, tech-wise. And you've got this incredible creative force and this productivity and enhancer and with its limitations. How are you internally sizing these products up? What are the main considerations that you're looking for before you can sort of run free or encourage people to turn loose in their use?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. And I think, the more we can guide people toward principles and principles and systems and ways of thinking about adoption that are more based on like, what is our strategy? What are the things we consider good about this product? And then building in an expectation that, guess what? The tool is going to change because capabilities are so rapidly changing. So I think the more we can push toward thinking about systems, thinking about standards rather than rules, those are the ways we should be thinking about things as organizations. And so then it's like, okay, so what the hell does that mean? It means like, all right, well, we could think of tool selection kind of more along the lines of life cycle management and putting in place and saying like, hey, this is our process every year, or maybe your organization doesn't move that every 18 months. Just like a piece of hardware that we'd refresh, we're going to relook at these tools. And I think, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, and more general tools are fine. If it's a choice between like sitting around and waiting 6 more months to find the exact perfect assistant or agent to do X and just pulling something off the shelf that we can implement yesterday, wow, do the other one. Because, capabilities are changing so quickly with this stuff that it's hard, for some use cases, that's great. The specialized software for whatever X practice you're doing really matters. For kind of general use, it's like, well, you know, vanilla X frontier model today is better than the best, most legally tuned old model 2 months ago by far at doing legal tasks. And so, I kind of think of it like, all right, how I would approach it within any organization is kind of being like, all right, what are our kind of general use cases that everybody can use, whatever it is, the transactional folks or the litigation folks, or maybe you have a small in-house department or something. What could everybody use? What are things that we use in common? Okay, let's focus on that first, and then really just try to get things going in a way you can try more than one tool at a time. You could try tools that aren't without confidential information. It says, say, okay, we're going to go try these tools in a way that we might not have to vet it completely, into our security process, and just creating that, kind of a culture of testing things, of adopting things. And of course, then there are all the things you have to check off the box, the infosec, information security, the privacy, those basic things that in a lot of ways I think have been like really just overblown and overplayed by lawyers of, the fear around those things. But they're, of course, very essential, but you can get them right. There is a way to do it. There are answers there. And so that's kind of my general approach is, think about this more like, okay, we're going to pick a tool for today. That wouldn't it be better if we could just sit around for a few minutes and say, what is a structure that would work for our organization for how we are going to manage the life cycle of these tools and move forward? And, and using all the all the things in the book for your organization, a use case registry. Hey, let's designate somebody as the use case arbiter. And maybe that person is an AI chatbot. I don't know. But you're saying like, hey, if you find something, here's a tool. It's general use. If you find something you're doing and you think, hey, this is kind of creative, go add it to the registry, go pump the idea into a simple web form and whatever your platform is, solicit these, have people go around, what did you use it for this week? Or maybe have a bounty for whoever comes up with the coolest idea this month. Hey, we'll buy you a RGB mouse that you can use that. Just kidding. Lawyers don't want those. But it just kind of like, what is set up ways to really go and collect what people are doing, because I don't know, this is all I think about every day, but I'm constantly amazed that when the people making the sausage, the people doing the hard work, have access to these tools, they will think up things that none of us here ever came up with. The users are the most powerful source of development at your organization because they get it. They get how to do it. And so, creating a registry of that and having somebody could edit it or whatever, but publishing that, important. Maybe you have a select group of people who are kind of your special ops, and you challenge them to say, hey, we're going to empower these people to have, they're going to be the POC group, and we're going to let them go out and kind of on an accelerated pace try to find solutions, but give them more free reign. And then they come and present it to us to kind of get out of a bureaucratic structure or something like that. But I think there are, a number of those things that you could do to kind of think big picture about it of how do we inspire innovation? How do we make this transition? And what does that mean for our technology or our, organization? Because really you're not trying to develop an AI culture. You're trying to use the culture of your organization and have match AI up to that. You match the tools up to how you're doing things and really ask like, who are we? What do we do? What makes us unique? Now, where does AI fit to that?
That is a great point of view, and I love that. You mentioned you want to really foster the culture, right? But the first step in this, and I think a lot of law firms may struggle with this, is actually understanding who would be in charge of that innovation. You mentioned having the ops team or someone in the firm that would be responsible for carrying the weight of implementing AI.
Yep.
Interviewing you, you're one of the first persons we've had with a title that actually says Director of AI and eDiscovery, right? So I'm curious, for any law firm out there or anyone in a managerial position, partner that wants to implement or create this new seat in their company or in their firm, how can they go about it, and how can they pick the right individual to actually get the first steps to foster this type of culture?
Yeah. It is a real mixture between, you can get the purely technical people. You can go out and get IT people who are DevOps folks, whether it's a small or large organization. You can find somebody who their whole job is to place enterprise applications. And they sit around thinking about the best way to do that and to inspire adoption and those things. Those are really important skills. You need to figure out the security piece. Yeah, that is step zero. Does this fit into our management framework? How does this fit? Great. But on the same token, hey, if we didn't need legal judgment in implementing these tools and all you needed was IT, then there would be no gap right now. Lawyers would already have these things integrated. We would never have been behind in the first place. And law firms would be functioning with all sorts of levels of automation. And so there really is, a chasm there that you have to bridge. And so, I would think like, well, you should expect to dedicate some attorney hours to this. You need to clear the path so that it's not an afterthought in terms of communicating, hey, here's our culture, or here are the things we're doing. This is the legal stuff with IT and creating that partnership to move it forward. But it takes real time. It takes time to go and use the tool and say, I don't know if I get this. And maybe it's just a matter of them getting it. And that's what's important. But I'd say you need some glue to put that together. I think it's best if it's a lawyer because they'll get it. Maybe it's not though. Maybe it's somebody from the technical side who's really good at translating lawyer, talking to them and knows how to talk to these lawyers, what they'll say and what will be persuasive. But I think it's a recognition like, okay, this will take time. This will take attorneys time. And if we don't want to do that, there'll be some consequence for that. There'll be some fit issue. But that's a good investment, man. Like it's, hey, the practice of law is going to change. And I think people are not going to sit around regretting like, man, why did we invest so much time in like sitting around thinking about how AI applies to X organization, And so I think it's realization, hey, this will be significant. It's a good investment. Have somebody from the legal side and then marrying it up with, we need somebody to facilitate this. And lots of IT teams. And it's some ways, I talked to some of my peers or others other law firms, and I see some patterns. And one of the patterns are, guess what? The legal industry that is kind of behind this adoption sometimes undervalues IT generally, or at some places. I have a firm in particular I'm thinking of with my friend works, and it's just clear like, wow, yeah, IT is, understaffed or too busy, or it's really difficult for them to kind of explain their needs. And if that's the case, then going and telling these people, hey, you have a new job. It's on top of your old job. And it's figuring out how to transform our practice using a very disruptive technology that's, going to be bigger than electricity, literally. Okay, that's doesn't sound like a recipe for success to me. So kind of like, okay, you got to clear the path, and it's not just a matter of you have some Todd Itami character. It's like, I got a great idea. By the way, you want to listen to some Megadeth? Like, okay, no, he has to that plus has to be provisioned. They have to have staff. They have to have the DevOps people in place. They have to have budget. And so it's the idea of like, yes, we need the leadership. We need somebody paying attention, but we also need to give them what they need to succeed. And that could mean a whole range of things at a whole range of sizes of organizations, but it's all within reach. In some ways, smaller places, okay, you have a smaller problem. So so it's okay that you don't have 3 DevOps engineers or whatever. But yeah, that's what I think it is. Kind of clearing the path, giving them resources they need, and creating this culture for innovation, creating a way that's AI friendly, AI safe to move forward.
Todd, if I had to put you on the spot here for a second, because Adrian's question about culture, I think is a really good one, because obviously that's sort of the mindset or the psyche of an organization. All right, inside that culture, what if I said to you, like, one sentence or 2 sentences, tell me how are you speaking to the AI skeptic? Like, what are you going to say to the practitioner who's like, yeah, I'm hearing all about AI. Great, it's fantastic. I've been doing this way my whole life. I'm not changing. I don't trust it. We're not disrupting it, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
What is your sort of like hard-nosed, like, how are you proselytizing, evangelizing AI for these people?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think of it, I think there is like a good guy pitch and a bad guy pitch. Yeah. I think the good guy pitch is something like really addressing head on let's talk about your concerns about security and privacy. And it's usually the case that they're like, well, I don't know. In some ways, like every news story that you hear about some hallucinated case being filed in a brief, and then the lawyers getting pwned, like sets us back a couple weeks or a month or two, on adoption. But we've kind of seen this before, with the whole cloud, the whole SaaS revolution. For a while there, everybody's like, well, I want all my stuff in that cloud. We don't do clouds around here. Like, okay, and there is the whole debate, the public-private cloud security paradox. Well, does X hyperscaler know security better, or does your security team with kind of tweak it more control know it better? It's a debate. You kind of guess where I fall out on that usually, with depending on how well provisioned different organizations may be. But I think the good guy pitch is something like, yeah, let's talk about your concerns. Like, those matter to me, and not portraying AI as something it's not. I mean, if you like go to some of these conferences and listen to enough salespeople, you'll be like, shit, like, we're there. We don't even need lawyers anymore. And it's kind of like, guys, wow. That's really not how the technology works. And the truth is that there's still a lot of prompt sensitivity involved that is unpredictable to us. There's still just some facts or some questions that you ask it, and it looks to you and I like something it just answered really well, and it just doesn't do it well. Sorry. And so it's really kind of being realistic about the limitations and saying like, hey, I get it. I get it. But think of it not like a crazy Microsoft Word that's going to do some crazy stuff sometimes, but think of it more like a junior associate, that you're saying like, hey, here, it's your first week here or your first year. Like, okay, some of the things they're going to do are great. They're first year associates law firm that are great, smarter than me, but great writers, great thinkers. But there's lots of stuff that I'm like, okay, so this is wrong. It would be malpractice for me to take that brief and be like, file that without looking at it. It's not how we do things. And so it's kind of the good guy pitch is more of like, hey, let's kind of reframe how you're thinking about this. and I want you to give it a try. I want you to try it. I want you to ask it to proof you, and you tell me the truth. Like, did you find something? Was it helpful? Or come tell me your pain points. What do you hate oh, you hate computers? Me too. What else? Like what were the biggest pain points? And try to use AI to kind of say, like, here's a way to do that. And so it's taking seriously. They do have a point. The people who are like, this sucks. This is overblown. Like the things they're reading and reacting to, I would probably agree with a lot of it. But it's like, okay, the good guy pitch is addressing that, saying, hey, well, we should do this. Our competitors, they're out there kind of doing this, and people are reporting. There are these studies. I don't know. They say it's good. That's the good guy pitch. The bad guy pitch is kind of like, oh yeah, like it's okay. Well, don't use it then. See what happens. I mean, it's kind of like, well, okay. I don't really see how this it's going to be inefficient. Your work product is going to suffer. Period. You're going to have worse information retrieval. It's just kind of the bad guy pitch is kind of like, yeah, sink or swim. It's your choice, and the market doesn't care. What your personal opinion is. Sorry. And we've already seen like it's starting to shift. And from day one, from like whatever the Goldman study was years ago when this stuff came out, and everybody's like, oh, wow, like GPT actually works. The second, predicted number 2 industry most impacted, legal. From day one, everybody's recognized it as kind of, like I say, the paradigm information work. And so bad guy pitch is, hey, train's leaving the station. You don't have to get on, but I don't know what's going to happen. You can go on the internet right now and search for prominent Wall Street law firm leaders, saying things like, yeah, in 5 years, I don't know about all these junior associates. Like, whoa, wow, that was said out loud. Okay, well, that's an opinion out there from somebody who's very well respected. And so I think, there are lots of opinions, but it does seem prudent to, we should do something about this probably.
Yeah. Hop
Yeah.
on that train before it leaves the station.
That's right.
Now, I would love to get your thoughts on eDiscovery. You've done more than your fair share of eDiscovery.
Yep.
What are some of your favorite ways of conducting it or using technology to really enhance your eDiscovery? What are some tips you would give out there to some of our listeners?
Yeah, I think it is, in terms of artificial intelligence, I think it's, hey, the tools that have been proven up in court, kind of, the old deterministic machine learning, technology assisted review, that there was, I don't know, a decade ago, people were like, what is this new thing? But now it's clear in court. There are even some opinions out there that are like, no, you need to use this if you're going to like claim burden. Nope, you need to try the machine learning to reduce your burden. But so it's use that anytime you can. We use it on every single case, even if it's not, kind of making production determinations for you. You can use it for QC. You can use it to structure the review, to see certain documents before others. And so it's, get all your legacy machine learning tools, analytics, use them on every time. And if it's burdensome, if you find it burdensome to use them, okay, you need to standardize that process then. You just create a template, take the extra 20% of the time it takes to do the setup and create a template. This is how we're just going to do it every time. Maybe it doesn't fit everything perfectly, but it really lowers the barrier to doing these things. And certainly even within those tools, there is space for creativity and to say like, okay, we're going to run alternative models, or maybe we're going to stratify the sampling and try to find a certain fact. And, there are ways of optimization and making it even more effective. But the key is, hey, you should probably use that every time. And then, Gen AI is really presenting a whole new world of eDiscovery and document review options. We're still waiting for case 1 that says like, that has a challenged Gen AI document review process. Nobody's challenged it yet because nobody's done it without having permission of the opposing party and coming to some agreement first. So still waiting for that challenge, still waiting for that first case to come out. And that's where, I'm like, oh yeah, don't be like the test case. and just go for it. That's my advice to my clients. I think it's super cool if your clients try that. Okay, somebody else, you guys should do that because it'll be cool to see that case. But I don't advise my clients, to be the test case. Um, but yeah, no thanks. but Gen AI is a powerful tool. It's different than technology assisted review and machine learning because you don't have to train it. Before we would say like, okay, you got to go code a bunch of documents to come up with a model, and then you can kind of see if the model works. But Gen AI, like, no, it works the same on one document as it does on 1 million. The use case and or the effectiveness of it, and of course, there's lots of prompt sensitivity, all that stuff in there. But it's you could try it right now. It's you can use it in a QC fashion if you don't trust it. Well, okay, send it through. So maybe use a cheap model, not the expensive one, and say, do any of these documents look like they might be privileged? Checking everything that's been coded not privileged. Maybe that's the subset you ask it for. And okay, or and maybe you give it a definition of privilege that's pretty strict. So if it comes back with any yeses, then you really want to look at those documents because they're probably miscoded, or maybe the opposite, or using a QC fashion, or hey, read these documents. Are any of these sensitive? Are there any PR risk here with what we're about to produce? Could any of this be spun in a bad way? I used to have, or still do and still use them, these like search term lists that were just like the terrible words. It was like from a professor at university, like every nasty word I've ever heard of. Then I had like a subset of those that I created that is like the really bad ones. And I think if you like give that to somebody, it might be against the law. Like you just harass everybody. They're terrible. It's just like the worst things you could think of. But I'm like, we're running those before we send docs out the door. Because if one of those words appears, we really want to know about it, for our clients. And so kind of doing those sorts of checks, those QC checks, because, it's moving everything we do, even, the civil procedure as it stands, the rules, the tempo, the pace, how we conduct it is built on this assumption that every day that goes by is a more and more flawed assumption. And the assumption is this: there is a limited human capacity to carry out certain analytical tasks. And the more time that goes on, that's starting to disappear. And so there are all these things that we've kind of left off the table, kind of like the looking out the window. How many drops of water are on the window? Like, I wonder. Well, guess what? Like, literally, go give it to these models. They can tell you in 5 seconds now, and it's kind of like those sorts of tasks are back on the table, and realizing that, wait, we can ask it this thing. We can ask it about this fact, or maybe there's some weird issue that we have. Make sure this weird issue isn't in these docs. Those are all on the table now. And if you're using it in this additive fashion and supplemental fashion, there's kind of nothing to lose. Like either it finds it or it doesn't. Check what it's finding. Does it look right? Okay. Yeah.
And the privilege piece and like being able to just put it in there and be like, are any of these documents privileged? Joe, have you experienced any type of prompting kind of like that yet? Or you tried?
I love that use case. I
Yeah.
mean, you talked about treating it, Todd, as a junior associate. I always talk about it just inviting it into the room to make it play the role that you want it to play. Is it information recall? Is it quality control? Is it, detailed guidance? Is it just like build me a timeline of things that exist in this document? I mean, but that leads to my question, Todd. Like, okay, help me understand this, especially from a bigger law firm perspective. When from an IT perspective, you're implementing these new tools and you're tracking their success. So first part of this is, what are those metrics that you're using to track the success? The second piece is, very broadly, one of the metrics seems to be like productivity enhancer, time saver. If that is a metric of success, doesn't that cut directly against the fundamental business model of a law firm, right? Like, you now are doing things so not 5% quicker, 85% more efficiently, 95% more. So then that seems to undercut the bottom line of the business itself. The more successful the tool is, theoretically, the less successful the law firm could be financially. So help me understand like the metrics you're using, and then how law firms are discussing what the future of their bottom line is going to look like as a result.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. So in measuring the success or failure of a tool, I think it's a very nuanced thing to whatever tool is in place. To the extent that usage of the tool or time spent using the tool is de minimis, and it's just copy and pasting it into another the proofing example. I think I would test that by saying, like, did you find this useful as a whole? Yes. Okay. Did this save you time? Yes. Kind of detecting, because you want to make sure what you're doing matters for the client still. I think most of it is so fast that it seems like it really delivers good value. In that case, like, okay, this is worth it to the client. But you want to measure that first and foremost. Is this delivering value to the client? In some ways, that's the only metric that matters. And if it's a yes, if it's positive, okay, like, then we should use it. We should use some form of it. And by delivering value, is it worth it? Is it accurate enough of the time to be worth it, to use it? And there's like a million grades of where that is. So I think that's question number. I'm measuring it purely in client value. Is this delivering value to the client? Is this good for our clients? That's what we're doing here? We're representing clients. We're doing what's best for them, not us. And so don't forget that, lawyers. So that's the answer number one. Number two is this idea, like, yeah, so kind of there's like a perverse incentives problem with efficiency in these law firms billing by the hour. How about that? This total, this first I'll recognize, like, yeah, this is not a new idea. Within the practice, there's a lot written on this there before AI. Efficiency improvements, period, created this problem. Like, oh, you don't need the shepherd's guide to go look something up. And, in my clerkship, we verified every quote of Texas law physically with reporters from the Texas Law Library. And we went and laid eyes on the books. And by the way, caught a lot of errors from the digital edition. That's another story. But, that takes more time than using a database. And so the same question, comes out, well, okay, isn't that kind of against, yeah, it is. There's no denying it. I think it will make things more efficient. It for sure is a yes to question one, which is the one I said that matters. Does it deliver value to a client? But I kind of see the future as, and I just wrote an article on this that came out last week. I think anybody who says that the whole pie is not going to get smaller, I can't follow that. I can't go along with that. I think it is getting smaller. It's going to change things. And just like technology assisted review changed things before, like contract attorneys are lawyers too, those smart lawyers too. And for sure, tar cut jobs, for sure, tar cut review workflows by at least 50% before the, Gen AI came along. So yeah, there are real consequences. Do I think it's going to happen? No doubt. And to people who, there are some people, oh no, the law is a gas and it'll fill the size of a container you put it in. And to some extent, I think, okay, for some things, yes. But if we look at it as a whole, take a step back, will Gen AI reduce the number of hours spent in the practice law? For sure. It'll reduce the number of hours, and it will make those hours that are spent so much better. It'll deliver so much more value to clients. And so then the follow-up question is like, how should law firms think about this? And I think that's above my pay grade, first off. Yeah. I'm like the tech guy. But my view is kind of like, okay, I think question number one is the focus of good law firms. How do we deliver value to clients? Is this thing that we're thinking about doing, does this help us do that? Does that improve that? If yes, then you should do it. And the consequences will follow, but I think clients will appreciate it. And I think if you're going to soon have the choice of, do you want to use really smart lawyers that are AI enabled lawyers, or do you want to use the really smart lawyers that are not AI enabled lawyers? And so that will be the choice in the market coming up. And I don't see a lot of advantage for the people who are like, yeah, but we're going to be the last ones to sign up for that one. Like, maybe that's a good strategy. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I think the question number one, delivering value to clients, that's really the one to focus on. And then from there, like, I don't know, there's other business decisions, other ways of dealing with it kind of on a micro level. But yeah, the macro question, there's no way around it. I don't know. Maybe somebody else has a persuasive view of this that we'll still need more lawyers, but
It's a very good question overall. And we are coming up on time here. So I really wanted to ask you this. What is your hottest take on the industry right now?
yeah, my hottest take. Wow. This is just like opportunity to get in trouble. um, I don't know. You can imagine I have many hot takes that do not speak for my organization or my clients. But what is my hottest take? I don't know. I think my hottest take is asking lawyers to fundamentally rethink what sorts of things are technical and what sorts of things are legal. And for a long time, we've gotten away with pushing things into the technical bucket that really don't make sense. And if we went and pulled all of Big Law and said, how many here know how to use the fundamental lawyer program of Microsoft Word? How many of you know how to use styles within Word? This very simple tool. Like, I think you'd be surprised at, the level of kind of Microsoft Word competency across the board for the thing they use all day long. And there's a certain culture that has enabled that, and a certain culture that has valued other skills and pushed lawyers into focusing on other areas to improve themselves as lawyers and saying, this is what makes a good lawyer. And I think that has taken a turn. I don't know if it was 20, 30, if it's 40 years ago, somewhere along the line, the culture took a wrong turn, and that we are going to experience a lot of slap back from that culture now that there is energy focused on using technology. And so I guess my hottest take is kind of like, wow, yeah, we need to radically rethink what sorts of things, how close we are to technology as lawyers, how much we need to understand, because the lawyers can do it. I mean, you can go out and figure out some convoluted statutory scheme or some great transaction that I'm like, what is that? Why are there 8 entities, involved in this transaction? We can figure out these really hard questions, but then we're like, I could not possibly learn Python. Like, you could, faster than you figure out this case for sure. And so I think it's just not that I think every lawyer uses them private, but I'm just saying, like, I think that we need to kind of take a fresh look at, like, okay, what is our minimum viable kind of tech IQ? And that needs to change, because that's what the market's going to force you to do. Yep.
It's the future.
Yep.
Completely agree. Well, thank you, Todd, for joining us here today. And thank you to our audience for tuning into Between the Briefs, brought to you by Steno. Special thanks to our guest, Todd Itami, for sharing his invaluable insights on the future of AI, eDiscovery, and legal technology. And of course, a big thank you to my co-host, Joe Stevens, for another fantastic conversation.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Adrian. This is a good one. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and stay tuned for more thought-provoking conversations at the intersection of law, technology, and innovation. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Up next on Between the Briefs.
Don't take client data and put it into the public version of ChatGPT, because it could be leaked. On the one hand, clients expect us to be on top of the latest technology, and we are. I mean, we're investing millions of dollars. A year ago, people were talking about, we need to be training everybody in prompt engineering. But as time has gone on, we've seen, no, we quite don't, because the Gen AI is learning how to do the prompt engineering for us. My hottest take in the industry is, despite the fact that everybody's talking about AI, and I still think...
Stay tuned for the full interview coming to you soon. Between the Briefs is brought to you by Steno. To find out more about Steno and how we combine exceptional court reporting and litigation support services to deliver a superior litigation experience, visit steno.com. That's STENO.com. And then make sure to search for Between the Briefs in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Steno, thanks for listening.